In the wake of an exploding head, Jean Grey's X-Men are on the run, and the world is against him. But they're going to track down a new mutant and see what they can do to help him. What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is an iRate review, where I go over a comic book, its story, its art, give you my impressions, and let you know whether it's something you should go back to the comic book shop for or not. Make sure you subscribe to get one of these every single week. The book that I want to talk about right now is XMen Red #2, which is one of the most promising X books to come out of Marvel in quite some time. The freshly resurrected Jean Grey has combined her team, and she's tracking down a few new members. And currently they have Asylum in Wakanda, but that might not be enough as they head out into the world to track down a new member of their team. Let's dive in and see what kind of trouble they can get into.
With issue #1 of XMen Red, Tom Taylor and Mahmoud Asrar kicked off what could be the comic book with most potential for the X-Men, starring Jean Grey, who's freshly resurrected out of Phoenix Resurrection. And though we want to dive into that team right now, first we're going to start off with a brand new character, and that's going to be Trinary. Evidently, this mutant, this technopath who has committed this crime against her country, is being detained inside her own cell, inside her own system, completely analog, so that way she can't deal with the digital world and kind of make her escape at this point in time. As her captor turns on the television set to show her some emphasis, who's really glad that it worked out, because if it didn't, it would have been really awkward. He gives her the impression that mutants all over the world are being held in question and being rebelled against. You know, people are against mutants. They're experiencing some kind of upheaval against them, specifically because of Jean Grey's incident with the UK ambassador, where their head exploded in issue #1. Of course, this young lady named Trinary unleashes the greatest threat known to man, the revealing of your internet browser history to your mother. So we jump back into what we saw previously, which is the news reports that we're dealing with in issue #1, where you've got these talking heads talking about things, and then you've got some very dangerous rhetoric that's happening as far as that's concerned. But the real key is that Jean Grey has been offered asylum in Wakanda, as well as the rest of the X-Men Red team that was saved by Namor in issue #1. Of course, they were offered asylum in Atlantis, but they do enjoy breathing. So while they're trying to lick their wounds and kind of recover and become a little bit more cohesive unit, we see Gabby. She's jumping off waterfalls and getting introduced to a new member of the team that hasn't quite joined yet. What is possibly one of the most powerful mutants. You know, he could go toe-to-toe with a Hulk, but it hurts him to do that. It hurts him to use his powers to that kind of level, to the point where it could possibly kill him. He's trading his power for his life. Of course, while things might be quiet in Wakanda, they don't stay that way for very long, simply because we see Jean Grey's password, which is based off of the Phoenix, evidently, her bank password being used as a key for a message sent by Trinary asking for her rescue. So she talks about the gender wage gap. She pays out all the women 25% more than what they've been earning, and then takes it from the CEOs of the highest earning people inside the country. And there's no way they could trace this back to her, but she's sure that they're prosecuting her for some kind of reason. So immediately Laura Kinney is just like, all right, let's go get her. And Jean's like, you know what would happen if you leave Wakanda and you're caught? You'd be extradited. You'd be facing trial. And Laura's like, so we're not going? And she's like, of course we're going. And the next time you see the X-Men, this X-Men Red team, they're inside Delhi. They're undercover, kind of. So, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that the costumes are the most on point when it comes to trying to stay hidden, but with Jean Grey's powers of telepathy, she can kind of influence the perception of people around her, which is evident by this kind of agent person that's heading their defense forces, getting forced into an alley where he thinks that he's buying coffee. So they kind of trap him, take his money because, well, he's buying a coffee, and they load up into the van so that they can make their way through the security checkpoints. Once inside, Jean melds with his mind and starts mining it for information as Laura, Kurt, and Gabby start making their way inside the compound, defeating everybody that they possibly can, disabling the cameras, and then finding out where the guards are on the floor so that way they can make their entrance as quietly as possible. Of course, when they get to the door's alarmed, but that's no problem for Kurt. He bamps inside, bamps out Trinary, and when she comes out, Tom Taylor chooses to let her make a great little Star Wars reference. It's just like, aren't you a little short for an X-Man, in homage to the Stormtrooper line? So I thought that that was really kind of fun. Of course, because of this anti-mutant rhetoric that's been going on, this anti-mutant sentiment, the people that are outside the gates, these gun-toting individuals, are ready to storm the compound and take out whoever they find for mutants. So Jean, being the only person outside, steps outside of the van and starts to handle crowd control herself with just one simple command: sleep. And we find that everybody falls down except for 3 people. And the last time that we saw somebody that was influenced by this, there's somebody else in their head. That's when we're talking about Cassandra Nova's influence, which is coming back to them. And the only thing that can stop them is to release the links to the rest of the X-Men Red and, well, potentially save Jean herself. Of course, that causes serious alarms for Kurt as he bamps through the entire compound out towards Jean to find that, you know, she's holding on to the bullets and she's disabled these people. But that's enough time for Singh to operate Code Sentinel. And even though Laura slices off his fingers and devastates his cell phone, the call has been made, and there's far too much for them to deal with at this point in time as a Sentinel bursts from the ground and we end issue number 2. So when we come down to issue number 2, it continues with more of that same sensibility that we got in issue number 1. Mahmoud Asrar's art is fantastic. The cross-hatching that gives it a little bit more depth, the grit, the texture, the way that his character models play out. It might not necessarily be the most detailed, but I like the kind of kinetic and fresh feel of his art style. I think it really complements the book well. And then Tom Taylor has a great mix of seriousness and kind of humor that goes into his storytelling style. So if you're talking about this, Jean is the very serious sentiment of it. Kurt is the kind of heartfelt person. Laura is a bit more tactical when it comes to her presentation. And then Gabby is, of course, the comic relief, because everything that she does inside this book and inside the previous book is tuned to making light or having fun with the situation, so that way we don't necessarily feel too heavy when we get weighed down as we go through the book. So it's really a compliment to Tom Taylor and his writing style for these characters. But I want to know what you guys think too, so hit me up in the comments down below and we can start that conversation. As always, if you like what you see, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything inside the world of comics.